Chapter 6, Creating Your Dream Team. The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. Niccolo Machiavelli. No matter how good you are, you can't do it alone. You can do the work of 2 or 3 people, and to achieve super success, you work that hard most of the time. But you can't be 2 or 3 people. You can't be in Los Angeles banking to nail down a financing at noon and sign a deal in Manhattan at 2. The most determined, passionate, vision-driven, high performer does not have the expertise, energy, or hours in the day to carry out every action, check every figure, and to review every contract generated by a company assuming a growth position. Your company, your entrepreneurial creation, is understandably a source of pride. Nobody else loves it, frets over it, and perceives your vision for it like you do. Nevertheless, the time comes when you must give up some, in fact, a significant portion of that creation to others in order for it to become what you dream for it. You must relinquish pride of authorship to the hands of others inside and outside your company. Pride of authorship has been the death of countless otherwise promising companies because its founding father wouldn't let go. Let's follow the parental parallel for a moment. You have a darling daughter you help bring into the world. Your highest ambition is to nurture that little girl, shape and form every phase of her young life so that she blossoms into an intelligent, happy, and successful woman. But you can't do it alone. Along the way, you have to entrust her to school teachers, piano teachers, camp counselors, and drama coaches. With luck, you'll achieve your ambition for her, but to do that, you have to share control with her, with other people, carefully selected specialists. Your entrepreneurial relationship with your company is much the same. You have to hire and retain experts in finance, accounting, and tax law to help give your enterprise the direction and counsel you can't give. You need the skills of stockbrokers, investment bankers, merchant bankers, and commercial bankers, attorneys, accountants, and consultants in several fields whose knowledge you value. Finally, the day comes when, for the sake of a few $1,000,000, you sell out a piece by piece to legions of profit-driven shareholders, strangers who view your entrepreneurial creation not with your passion, but with undisguised greed, or at least as potential source of security for their retirement. That's why you use 2 levers to pry open the way to super success: other people's money and other people. These other people, recruited from a variety of sources, are what constitutes your dream team. Let's talk first about board of directors, the initial dream team members you need to assemble before you can recruit the others. The board of directors. When I mention a board of directors, your first reaction might be, hey, this is just a little hip pocket company. Isn't a board of directors sort of premature? Not at all. Directors are your first and most immediate requirement. You wouldn't think of playing a baseball game and fielding every position with no other players than yourself until about the 4th inning. So why would you begin your company with yourself being the one and only expert filling every position of responsibility? You may think of your enterprise as simple and uncomplicated, but if you're preparing for a quantum leap into the big leagues, you've got to fill all the positions on the field now, before the game starts. So incorporate. If you haven't already, retain titles of president and chief executive officer and begin to search for your dream team directors. Author's note: subsequent to this, I have found it easier and more reliable to recruit the board of directors, your dream team, without incorporating the company first, for a number of reasons, which I'll only name one: that the financing institution or the manner in which you finance may dictate the form of the company, whether it's an LLC or a subchapter S, etc. End of author's note. The most immediate benefits your board of directors bring to your dream team are credibility and prestige. The best source of directors is recently retired CEOs and other top executives of local, regional, and even national companies, and they're not inaccessible. As with finding a suitable mentor, pick up the phone and call. Explain your situation and direction in which you're moving and how you have some fantastic ideas on consolidating the cottage industry or whatever your goal may be. Express your desire to have the individual add his or her knowledge, experience, and prestige to your company. You'll be surprised at how receptive even high profile people can be. One of my partners discovered that email is the most effective way to get their attention. How to get their email address? Call their company and ask, and look on their website. Author's note: in recent years, LinkedIn has proven to be an extremely helpful tool to build your dream team. And there's various forms of LinkedIn. And the premier LinkedIn, which I don't know, costs $100 or something a month. I'm not positive about that because my office has set mine up. Normally old, time-consuming process, very short in comparison to build your dream team. End of author's note. The senior individuals are rich with experience and wisdom you can call on. They're probably frustrated because nobody asks them for their opinion anymore, and they've got time between golf games to give you whatever time and attention you need, and they're not likely to try to interfere with how to run your business. One question many senior and retired people ask is, how can I contribute? I wouldn't want to be involved if I couldn't contribute something. It is very disarming to have a former CEO of a Fortune 1000 firm ask you if you think he can contribute to the success of your company. So just flip it around. Sir, I would look to you for recommendations on others we might consider for director positions. Author's note: I've told the seminar attendees and mentees, and more recent years, the mentees that I mentor for free for a year, the magic words you want to hear from them is, I'm very interested if I can add value. End of author's note. Select an experienced chairman. First, an individual with an established reputation, though not necessarily in your own industry. Your chairman should be, to the fullest extent possible, an executive, heavyweight, highly experienced person who has done dozens, even hundreds of business transactions over the course of his or her career. In real estate, they call him an anchor tenant. I myself am a chairman of a number of corporations. In every instance was brought in because no matter what comes up for any of these fledgling companies, I've been there and done that. The rest of your board positions should be filled with individuals from varying backgrounds who share one common quality. They all have more business and financial experience and acumen than you. Your board ideally should include a financial person, an accounting specialist, and one or two other individuals who have already achieved what you're trying to achieve in your field of endeavor, particularly in growing a company geometrically through acquisition. Your accounting expert might be a former regional manager of a Big Four accounting firm. Your financial-based director might be a retired investment banker. All these people, no more than 4 or 5 in a number, will inevitably contribute contacts, tips, and ideas you'd have never dreamed of otherwise. They are the core from which you will now proceed to build an aggressive, acquisition-hungry corporation. By the way, your board must be what I call lawsuit aware. Although it may go without saying, at some point mention it to them anyway. For the record, you accept litigation as part of exponential growth. You regard litigation as a legitimate business tool, and if you don't, you should. If the idea of filing suits makes them uneasy and the thought of getting sued frightens you away from acting in the best interest of the company, stop reading here and go to a romance novel. Author's note: in recent years, we have used with many of my mentees, in addition to a board of directors, an advisory board, where an advisory board has no liability in giving advice for the new co. And the advisory board, instead of getting stock in the holding company or in the company that you're forming, will get stock options. And we'll talk more about that in later chapters. End of author's note. In business, as in life, disagreement happens. Assassins abound. Trust me, I've been involved in about 200 lawsuits and have only lost a couple of times in the US or the UK. The greed, arrogance, and stupidity of others need to be kicked out of your path to glory without a second thought. without a break in stride. Be mentally prepared to battle in court whenever you have to, and have a board of directors prepared to back you up. Author's note: litigation, unfortunately, is a way of life in the United States, whereas in the rest of the world, it doesn't abound. So the directors that you're trying to recruit to your dream team will be more aware of litigation in the United States. And that's where the aforementioned advisory board will probably help and assist you in building out your dream team. End of author's note. As for compensation, don't even bring it up the first or second time you and your prospective directors talk. Whatever you may offer is table scraps compared to the wealth they've accumulated after 30 years in business leadership. Eventually, almost as an afterthought, mention you'd like to offer each director 2 to 5% of your company, depending on the extent of their time and participation involved. Offer a few points more to your board chairman based on the projected depth of his involvement. Then the issue of compensation is covered. Author's note: for a more sophisticated board organization, you may even have a chief marketing officer, and for sure you'll have a CFO, and you may very well have a COO and or CEO if you're not qualified to be CEO. Those positions require and are due more compensation than the 2 to 5. They may be 3, 6, 7, 8, 9%, and in that time frame or in that instance, the CEO and chairman will get more than the 5 or 10%. End of author's note. Remember that you assemble your board of directors before you begin your search for outside accounting and legal professionals. Assuming your board is complete, it's time to continue building your dream team. Before you make the first phone call to the first accounting firm, sit down and write your mission statement to articulate your vision and the overall strategy you intend to pursue in your quest of that vision. The mission statement is important to most professional minds in that it reveals how much you understand about where you intend to take your company and the boldness and clarity of your vision. Though most mission statements tend to be pie-in-the-sky crap, there are some magic words you want to incorporate into this brief document to make it stand out from others. You want to dominate the industry, for example, and become a major force in determining the future of that industry. We're going to consolidate a fragmented or cottage industry. Tells the reader you plan to grow geometrically through acquisitions, an exciting prospect for any accounting firm that would like to boost billings in the same way. Do not confine yourself to a time frame. That's a detail at this point. While you and your directors fine-tune your mission statement, also pull together an executive profiles of your directors. When all the documents are complete and professionally bound in a presentation handout, begin setting up interviews with accounting firms. Your new directors will no doubt have contacts among the big four for those entrees. If not, pick the phone and start making cold calls on accounting firms. Author's note: in recent years, we have expanded the mission statement to include an executive summary, a generic in scope, talking about the industry and where it stands vis-a-vis being consolidated. In addition, as I mentioned before, we have used LinkedIn very successfully. Not everybody's not on LinkedIn, but certainly big four accounting firms are. End of author's note. Retaining the right professionals for the right price. What kind of accounting firms? For starters, you need expertise of a highly reputable CPA firm or chartered accountant firm in the UK. My contention has always been that you avoid hiring your neighbor or your cousin, the accountant, or even a hometown CPA company. From the very beginning, use a big four accounting firm. How can you afford the best? PricewaterhouseCoopers, Deloitte Touche, Ernst & Young, or KPMG? Well, get to that. We'll get to that later. By the way, each of these firms is actually an enormous group of companies operating globally with between 120,000 and 150,000 employees and annual revenues of around $25 billion. Author's note: notwithstanding this was written 8, 9 years ago. It is still true, and there are still the revenues approximate $25 billion. End of author's note. Set up preliminary interviews with all Big Four accounting firms with offices in the city in which you'll be doing business. If you're not close to a Big Four, you will have to consider a firm in the top 10. Schedule yourself and one of your directors, but not your board chairman. If possible, have the accountants meet you outside their offices. If your new offices don't have a conference room, try to arrange one elsewhere. If you must meet at the accounting firm, make note that the size of the conference room they put you in, as well as the seniority of the accountants you're meeting with. It'll indicate their initial estimate for your potential as a profitable client. Make sure that the partner is present. Many successful individuals started by interviewing regional firms and then moving on to the Big Four when their comfort level increased. I strongly recommend this practice. The first meeting is a brief one. Your presentation should last about 20 minutes, during which you simply expand and elaborate on your mission statement, re-emphasizing the fact that you intend to consolidate through acquisition an industry that is fragmented and basically in chaos. You also tell them up front you're interviewing 4 other accounting firms, and you'll go with the one which offers your company the best deal. The whole meeting should last no more than 40 to 45 minutes. It's a beauty contest. During the second round of interview meetings, you may have narrowed the field down to maybe 2 or 3 firms. You should expect these interviews to be attended by an audit partner and or a tax partner, plus someone who has experience in corporate finance. When you're obviously an aggressive company seeking growth through acquisitions, accounting firms will listen to you for 2 reasons. First, they envision their own geometric billings growth riding on top of yours. Second, a company in an acquisition mode is less likely to change accountants once their accounting firm picks up the rhythm of the company, understands its vision, pace, and tempo. This gives you an opportunity to leverage your potential with regard to their fees. Accountants will work on a contingency fee basis, except for auditing, with fees linked to success or failure. Audit independence is important for accounting firms as defined by them in General Accepted Accounting Procedures, called GAAP. Nearly all countries have similar rules and procedures. Authors note words that are more favorable now in 2016 instead of contingency fees are, in fact, are delayed fees, success fees. End of author's note. So you talk to accountants about value-added fees and success-oriented fees. Underline these terms. They are very important phrases for you to use. Recently, I made presentations to a number of accounting firms. In every instance, the partners immediately responded to those terms. Big Four partner suggested they will bill only 50% of their hourly rate until we made a successful acquisition, then 100%, and then play catch-up until they made up their balance. Another big firm said they would wait for 6 months after our first transaction to begin full billing. The point is that accountants are flexible as long as the aura of professional independence is respected. Authors note, there's other combinations that the Big Four or smaller regional firms will use, pushing out fees as much as a year with no payment, and paying a premium of up to 130 or 150% upon successful transaction. End of author's note. At each of your second meetings, accounting partners will be selling to you. You should expect them to respond to your previous presentation and be prepared to discuss your specific needs and expectations of them as a Big Four firm. By the third meeting, you should have the input and intuition to have narrowed your choice is down to 1 or 2 firms. Attend these meetings with your board chairman and or another senior director. In addition to moving toward your final selection, ask for recommendations for the law firm. You will benefit from the fluidity of working with accountants and lawyers who already understand one another. Also, request that each accounting firm send you a draft engagement letter spelling out the terms of the relationship. With the help of your board, massage this draft to your best advantage and return it to them several times if necessary. This document is important that it may be the basis for your accountant-client relationship for years to come. Then, based on which firm has spelled out in writing the best deal for your company, make your selection. Author's note: in recent years, we have found it based on how accounting has changed to have your CFO, director, and or your financial director, or both, attend the final meetings with the accountants in lieu of your board chairman. End of author's note. Once your accountant has been selected, you will also want to retain the services of a top law firm. I prefer an international law firm, but you want one that's at least nationally active. Our lawyers or solicitors in London, for instance, were Freshfields, now part of an international conglomerate, a British law firm that's older than the United States. Freshfields also represented the Queen and the Bank of England. I preferred to think that the Queen was using Great Western's law firm. They were pretty damn prestigious. Conventional wisdom in London had advised us these chaps would hardly consider representing you Americans, I should think. But they did, of course, and at the time when our lawyers spoke, the advice or opinion people listened. Author's note: as I used to say, Freshfields represents the Queen, the Church of England, the Bank of England, and Dan Penna. End of author's note. Have I mentioned perception reality lately? At the outset, our choice of law firms enhanced the perception that we were more successful than we were, but certainly as successful as we intended to be. Incidentally, one of our lawyers, Freshfields, was a cocky Australian named Alan Murray Jones. Smart, yet converted to become our mole at Freshfields. Even the moment of business we ran through Freshfields, he never did make partner. After centuries of tradition, Freshfields just couldn't be swayed by enormous billings of an upstart American oil company. When Jones left to join another large international law firm, Durant Peace at the time, now part of a much larger firm, we followed him, and the leverage of our business helped him become partner there. Here's another tip for assembling your dream team. Whenever possible, within the oak paneled offices of any attorneys or CPAs, I've always sought out a hungry young lawyer or accountant I could trust, an up-and-comer with greater ambition and more talent than his employer appreciated. I cultivated such a bright, motivated individual because inevitably they become my moles within their own organization. Their allegiance gradually shifted from their employer to me. To that, instead of telling me what I cannot do, they find ways to enable me to do what I want to do. Now, in no way are they doing something wrong, but they are now looking at and digesting information in a different light. You're no longer merely a client, you're their client. A caution: be kind to your mole. In my younger, less sensitive days, I often screamed unkind language to our mole at Coopers & Lybrand, now PricewaterhouseCoopers. She served us well enough for years, but when I left Great Western, she found ways to repay my verbal indiscretions, although I have to say she was always a first-class professional. Author's note: I just spoke to the managing partner of the office that we used at Coopers & Lybrand, that became PricewaterhouseCoopers, and he's now 82 years old and retired. I asked him about that lady partner she is now retired, and a few of the other partners. And one of the board members that I'm currently serving with, who's a former PricewaterhouseCoopers partner from Texas, knew the managing partner from that office. And when he called him for a recommendation, Ronnie recommended us highly. End of author's note. What's in it for the hotshot lawyer and accountant? I continuously remind their employer how valuable they are and how worthy they are of raises and promotions. But dearer to everyone's heart, given the right individual and the right circumstances, I can offer them equity in an entrepreneurial success they're helping me create. When that occurs, of course, you'll find that they almost always leave their firms to join you full time. That brings me back to your venture. During the early stages of your pursuit, when you're just building your dream team, how can you afford to retain a top law firm? You bring them into the equation. Come on, Dan, you can't do that. You can't walk in and buy them with a piece of action that doesn't exist. I sure as hell did. I also secured the services of blue chip brokerage firms in the same way, more than once. Top legal counsel costs, say, 450 to 850 an hour or more. And I mean, the clock starts when your lawyer picks up the phone. It costs you a quarter just to say good morning. But lawyers are not as concerned with independence as they are counterparts in accounting. Regardless of what they say, they'd have you think lawyers are people who needs and greeds just like you, and they'll listen to a deal. Author's note: lawyers now aren't getting $450 to $850 an hour. They're getting more like $450 to $2,000 an hour. End of author's note. Here's how. You say you're a good counselor. You say you can make this deal happen. I believe you can. So here's my deal. Your fee is $475 an hour. I'll pay you $550 an hour or even $600 an hour when you're successful, or $110, maybe $200 an hour if it crashes. The lowest figure is meant to cover their real costs, such as paralegal and administrative expenses. But any fee must come out of successful transactions, and fees for unsuccessful deals are rolled into the next transaction. My rationale is that any fee for a deal is too high if it crashes, but almost no fee is too high if you score. Hey, if we make 10, 20 million, I'm delighted to share the wealth with the lawyer who worked nights for 6 weeks, who found loopholes that would choke a gnat, who worked for me rather than the IRS or SEC. Accountants, of course, are bound by certain restrictions that preclude them from taking direct equity positions and direct contingency fees, but they will work with you on non-audit issues. Believe me, they will cooperate. In some of their most recent deals, my partners in several growth companies have found professionals quite willing to defer fees altogether for 6 months. Author's note: as I currently sit here in 2016, May, we have delayed fees with all big four accounting firms and probably 7 of the big 10. End of author's note. Along the way, the lawyer will perform feats of acrobatic prowess, even if he never believed possible. Why? Because instead of getting a flat fee regardless of outcome, he's got equity in success. And believe me, since adopting a success strategy, I've never had a professional advisor kill a deal. In fact, I've had them resurrect a number of deals, each one a financial phoenix rising from the ashes on the conference room carpet. Author's note: the large international law firms are not as accepting of taking equity in deals, just as the accountants are precluded from. They have to check with their partnership agreements and their partners, and most times, if not always, the big international firms, law firms, will reject the idea of taking equity in the deal, and that you will have to go on a strict success fee basis. End of author's note. So you've got an experienced and influential board of directors, a big four accounting firm, and a top, perhaps international law firm on your dream team. You are prepared to begin your quantum leap as anyone on Wall Street, and you're ready to begin your search for financing. Incidentally, the credentials of your dream team will be noticed by every banker you approach. They know that Ernst & Young and PricewaterhouseCoopers won't accept a client without doing thorough due diligence. With the light of powerhouses such as these behind you, you cast a hell of a shadow in the offices of banking institutions. Author's note: just not commercial banks, although we'll discuss that in later chapters, but all financing institutions. End of author's note.